What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Trench Talk. And today we are joined by Ted Larson, currently a free agent, but has been in the NFL for a pretty long time and moved around. So, again, Ted, thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So, last week when we had Matt Skura on, we talked a lot about with OTAs happening right now, how they're doing it all through Zoom and they're working on their workouts. But as a free agent, obviously that situation is different for you. So, how has the quarantine right now impacted your free agency time of, your workouts, who you're talking to? How's that working?
It's been a weird year as far as that because there was a first phase of free agency, but there wasn't really a second phase. There wasn't a chance to have these teams evaluate their players that they have on the team. There wasn't a chance for these teams to evaluate rookies. So the kind of second phase of free agency has been slow, and there's a lot of veterans kind of just waiting around in limbo. And for me, it's an experience where I've been in the lockout in 2011, so it's not a dissimilar year from that, where there's not a lot of direction. You're kind of just waiting for that green light to go. And I spend the off season in Phoenix, so I've been out in Phoenix working out like I normally do. Just haven't been associated with the team, so kind of just biding my time, trying to stay healthy, trying to stay in good shape, and waiting for whenever the veteran market really picks up.
Right. So then I know they're eyeing still that return for, September and however that's going to work. Do you think there's going to be like a big push right before then where everyone's, like all these vets are going to get picked up, or is it going to kind of be like, you think a mid-season type move?
I think it's going to be a situation where these teams have a lot of rookies. They have a lot of young guys that don't have a ton of experience, and they're going to need guys that can play, with very little training camp. If there's limited training camp, the development of these young guys is going to be hampered. So I think you're going to need someone who you can plug and play, and then someone even, where you can add that veteran experience and then bring these young guys up and kind of fast track them. So I think it's going to be a tiered thing, where maybe it's right before training camp, maybe it's after a week of training camp, maybe it's after training camp altogether. But I think there will be a strong market for veteran players that have experience and that can contribute right away.
Cool. And have there been any updates from like the NFLPA on what the situation is going to be, or do they have a better idea about, moving forward, how it's going to work?
I think the situation kind of is just status quo. I think that some of the teams have opened up their facilities to rehab, and, there's social distancing procedures in place. I think that there's not going to be an off season. I know the NFL extended the virtual off season 2 more weeks, but I doubt that anybody gets anything going right now. I don't think anybody's going to be back in the facility until late July, like training camp.
So then what are you doing right now for, workouts and stuff? Do you have a full home setup that you're doing, or are you going out to a public space that you've been able to, get access to?
Yeah, since I signed with Arizona in 2014, I've been working at it, a place called O-Line Performance run by LaCharles Bentley. And there's a handful of maybe 20 offensive linemen that work out there. So I've spent every offseason out here training, and we were lucky to kind of continue working out here all through the quarantine. And I do have a home setup. I've got like a rack and some weights. So, I've had some workouts that I've done in my garage, but I got pretty lucky that I had a place to work out during the quarantine.
Cool. Yeah, that was actually the interesting thing is I've been following Charles Bentley for a really long time. And mostly because people always reach out to me asking about how to be a better lineman and, what workout should I do and all this stuff. I'm like, don't even bother with me right now. Just go follow him. Because like the amount of stuff he posts, even on like how posture affects in your posterior chain and just all the simple things that you can correct and, the S curve in your spine and how it affects your run block and all these crazy things that I had no idea about that I've learned from him has been, incredible resource for me as a coach, but also, little bits to try and help other people. So what's it like working out at like an O-lineman gym?
I think it's good from a couple different standpoints. You have, like you said, LaCharles and his group there is a great resource as far as, analyzing the physiology of line play and specifically tailoring workouts for bigger guys, because there's a lot of stuff you have to take into account when you're dealing with guys that are over 300 pounds and, 5, 6, 7 years in the NFL, you got a lot of mileage on you. So workouts are tailored, for offensive linemen, but you also get that that camaraderie of working out with linemen, and you get to spend the off season rather than training with a couple, defensive backs and a quarterback. It's all linemen working out and kind of shooting the breeze and joking around and making fun of each other.
Is there anything where, you don't talk, secrets because you're on different teams, or is it still that like community aspect where you're kind of, willing to help everyone out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the goal is growth and development, and I don't think there's any secrets, the guys don't already know about. I mean,
yeah,
I feel like you go to teams and every team basically does the same. You all run inside zone, outside zone, gap schemes. So I think that having guys from different teams really contributes to players growing and hearing things certain ways and picking up little technique things throughout your entire career. And I guess I recommend for young guys, how do I get better? How do I learn how to be a better pass blocker, run blocker? I think that the resources they put out are phenomenal. So I kind of that's the first thing I say. Hit up the Google machine and then check out O-line performance on Instagram or social media.
Great. So the one thing I've actually noticed is they've kind of done not rebranding, but I see they go by OLP Media now. And then I also noticed that they had is it a sports agency dedicated to just specifically O-line?
Yeah, I think they split up their Instagram a little bit into training, into O-line specific stuff, and then kind of like a general content page.
Yeah.
So they have a couple different pages, and LaCharles has set up an agency just strictly for, as of right now, offensive linemen. So I think it's an interesting angle, and I think I recently signed with I was with the same agency for 10 years and recently made the change. But I think it's an interesting thing, and going forward, I think it'll be pretty successful.
What is the value proposition, on your end for signing with an agency dedicated specifically to O-linemen?
I think if you're maybe a top guy, it's not going to have the value that if you're. So for me, I'm kind of a swing guy. I can play multiple positions. I add veteran leadership. I have almost 90 starts, almost 140 games played. So I think for a guy like me, they're going to be able to translate that value into something the teams can appreciate and sell that versus just, hey, here's a guy, a 10-year vet. I think that you're selling maybe a certain something that doesn't jump off the paper, but they're going to, because they're so familiar with offensive linemen, they're going to be able to translate that a little bit better.
So what's it like you said, you've moved around a bunch of different teams. How does that, what impacts those decisions where you've moved from, again, what is it, 5 different teams at this point? Was it always, you were looking for something new?
Yeah, well, I mean, I played out my whole rookie contract and signed with Arizona for a couple of years. I would have loved to be back, but it kind of free agency went a little bit unexpected. In 2016, I ended up in Chicago, and I would love to be back in Chicago. Signed with Miami on a 3-year deal, and played 2 out of 3 years with that. The whole coaching staff got fired, and that kind of screws up the deal there at the end. But I have bounced around. I would have liked, obviously, to have a little more stability. It just kind of didn't happen. There was a lot of coaching changes that have happened, and that doesn't necessarily help continuity on a team. But I think, if anything, being on so many different teams, I've picked up so many different offensive schemes, so many worked with so many different coaches that kind of just adds to my general experience and gives me confidence to join a team. If I had to join a team in middle training camp or middle of the season, I feel like I would be able to pick up their scheme fairly quickly.
Right. And, was there ever a city that you kind of considered as like, I know I'm going to make this my home base? Or did you always have, your house in Arizona and then kind of just went from, Tampa Bay to Arizona back?
Yeah, no, I lived in Tampa the 4 years I played there. I had actually grown up in Tampa, so it kind of felt like a hometown. Never bought a house there, but when I signed with the Cardinals, I bought a house in Phoenix and decided it's going to be our home base. And it served as our home base since 2014. And it's been super convenient to have a home when you're playing for, we were Miami, Chicago, back and forth. I mean, it gives the kids like a level of continuity that,
Right.
and the level of stability. Even though it's like April rolled around and the kids are like, "What? Where are we going? Like, are we going somewhere?" I mean, my son's 3 years old and he's been in every April. He's going to another city for OTA. So they actually don't mind, moving from city to city. But it is nice to have a home that from January until usually April or May that you're in.
And so, looking back at your life and looking at, this different sports you played, the thing I've always found with a lot of linemen is like, they were always the biggest kids growing up. So they were just automatically linemen. Did you play football from a really young age and that's just kind of, the way it went, or what did you play growing up?
Yeah, my parents didn't let me play football because I would have played with, I guess, older kids, because I was a little bit bigger. So I played baseball, soccer, basketball. Probably what I enjoyed most until I could play football was soccer. I was a goalie, and I would try to be as physical as possible. You can kind of like jump people's legs and push them out of the way. But I started playing football when I was in high school, freshman year. I was never a super big kid. Even when I graduated high school, I was only about 230 pounds. So kind of just I tried to use my athleticism, and I've worked over a bunch of years to gain a bunch of muscle mass, and I'm only 6'2.5", 6'3". So I think I've tried to maximize the genetics that I have, and the limited genetics, I should say, and it's worked out decent.
Yeah. So then I know some people that put on incredible amounts of weight between, high school and university. When you went to NC State, did you put on like a bunch of weight before the season started, or was it like a gradual thing over time where you just started getting a little bigger and bigger?
For me, it was gradual. Like I said, it was about 230 maybe when I graduated high school, and then 20 pounds a year maybe. And I was playing defensive line for the majority of my time at NC State. So being 275 was kind of cool. And then, I switched to offensive line. And so I'm like, I have to gain a little bit of weight, and played the first couple of years in the NFL around 300, 305, and kind of just was playing a lot of center. Kind of was sick of sitting on bull rushes. So I think it was between like my fifth and sixth year I decided to gain about 15 pounds. So like right now I play around 325, 330. So it's been 100 pounds since I graduated high school, and I think I'm ready in a couple of years to shed some of that weight.
Yeah, that's always one of the interesting things you see is like a bunch of old linemen after they finish playing, how much weight just like drops off immediately. Is that from like mostly a caloric intake standpoint where you don't have to eat 3,000, 4,000 calories a day, or how does that, like, how much do you actually eat every day?
I think it has to do with a couple different factors, but I mean for me, as far as I eat, it's gotten less and less as I get older. I think your metabolism slows down, and you need to be a little smarter with what you eat. I try to really take care of my body. I'm 32, and so I know that window is small, so I try to eat pretty cleanly and stay in pretty good shape. But as far as guys losing weight, I think it goes either one or two ways. You either blow up and get even bigger, or if you've been a guy who's a 305, 310, like struggling to keep weight on, eating a bunch of food, I think you're finally just like, okay, now I can shed some weight. And from what I've seen with guys that have retired, that I know, you shed 20 pounds pretty quick, and then maybe the next 10 or 15 takes a little while. But I think offensive linemen are pretty smart guys, and they know what they're doing. And even though they are a little bigger, I think it takes a little bit of know-how to gain that weight. So losing it, I think, is kind of the next progression for them. And you've seen a bunch of guys lose a bunch of weight pretty quickly after they get done playing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like obviously the big one on like everyone knows of right now is like Joe Thomas.
Yeah.
Right.
He lost a bunch of weight. Yeah.
Lost a bunch of weight, did a ton of swimming. Apparently that was one of the biggest things he did for, low impact on his joints. And then he was just on the Titan games with The Rock. Like he's one of the athletes on it now, and he's ripped. So it's always really cool to see. But the one thing I did want to go back to a little bit about with, your time at NC State is what's that switch like when you move from, defense to offense? And did you ever play any O-line in high school before that to give you, any bit of experience at it?
Yeah, I played both ways in high school. I don't know that I ever knew what I was doing. I mean, as far as the scheme, because when I had to relearn in college, it was completely different. But making the switch, I guess playing a defensive line, you're in really good shape. So it was like I was in way better shape than the offensive lineman. And I could just run around and be physical. The thing that took me the longest was, actually knowing what I was doing. It wasn't just, running ahead and like our defense was pretty simple when I played D line. So learning the scheme and learning the technique and learning just how to stay balanced and not fall on your face every other play was kind of the toughest thing for me.
Right. And then so because, you only played O-line for 2 years in college, was it a really big adjustment when you went to the NFL as an O-lineman?
Yeah, because I'd only played center in college. So
right.
I had to learn how to play guard pretty much in training camp and actually ended up playing, I think, like 10 or 11 games at left guard my rookie year for Tampa Bay.
Mm-hmm.
So, trial by fire. And, I mean, it really took me, I don't know, 3 or 4 years to actually feel like I was like, okay, I actually know what I'm doing. I can explain what I'm doing. And I'm not just kind of like guessing out there. But to really learn, you have to have some good coaches who are willing to explain things and just, the repetition that you get over so many years, you become kind of an expert at.
So then what, as you start to learn how it works to be an offensive lineman and what it took, did you have a certain play style that you kind of gravitated towards and then kind of stuck with?
Sure. I think that progresses and it changes based on what the culture of the team is, what the team likes to do. When I got to Tampa Bay, there were a lot of, the league was a little bit different. It was a little more lenient as far as, aggressiveness and physicality, and those guys kind of set the the standard with, we were going to finish guys, we were going to knock guys over piles and finish guys in the ground. And so it was a super kind of physical thing that I tried to carry over to Arizona, and they were like, you're wild. Like, what are you doing? So I kind of calmed down and I think it varies from team to team. Some guys, some teams like that, guys finishing guys, and some guys just want you to be that quiet professional. So I think for me, it's like you're bouncing around from team to team. You try to play as hard as you can through the whistle. And for me, that's always been important, playing through the whistle, being aggressive. And for me, it's, I'm not the biggest guy. So I feel like the aggressive factor plays a big aspect in my game.
Yeah. Do you miss that style of NFL where, there was, less holding calls and more things were allowed, after the play?
Yeah, for sure. There was definitely a transition, I think, with the health and safety of the NFL where, you can't knock guys over the pile or, take those shots that you used to be able to take. And, I mean, that was a slow transition. And I think if the NFL finds you enough, you're like, all right, I'm done. I'm not going to hit any guys. And that's kind of what happened. I got a bunch of fines like that and flags, and you kind of just like, all right, I'm done. But I think that the NFL is always concerned with health and safety of players, and that's important. But you can definitely still get some cheap shots in when you want.
So then, what was the fine that was such a number that you finally said like, okay, I might need to change a little bit? Like, can you disclose that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on my rookie deal, and back then I think fines were a little bit less. I never had like a $15,000 fine, but
okay.
A couple $7,500 fines, for blocking a guy, and there's been no whistle, and it's just they say he's out of the play, but I mean he easily could make the tackle. You're like, well, geez, dude, like I can't be fined $7,500 once or twice a year or 3 times a year. It's like it's not worth it. And you would have these, you have a call to review it with whoever's in charge of the fines, and you're trying to plead your case, and it's times it's been a guy like Matt Burke, former offensive lineman. You're like, come on, dude, like cut me some slack here.
Yeah.
But I try to stay away from that. It's like the fines are no fun for sure.
Right. So I actually didn't know that about fines, that you have a chance to, plead your case. Is there ever, with fines, whenever I've seen it's just been like, here's a letter on a guy's, locker room door that says you've been fined $15,000 for whatever you did. Does everyone have a chance to plead their case with fines and, kind of see if they can get it reduced?
Yeah, you do. You call in usually like a Monday or Tuesday. on your day off after you get it, and you talk to whomever it's been. I think it's been Derek Brooks has been in charge of it, and Matt Burke. It's usually a former player who has an idea of the game, and it's tough to get it overturned. Usually you can get it reduced. I've had a couple fines reduced, but I got fined. There was one time Josh Freeman threw an interception, and as we're running to cut, tackle the guy, someone's on top of him, like punching him. So I ran over and kind of like cleared the guy off of Freeman and, ripped his helmet off. And I ended up getting fined, and he actually took care of that fine. So that was pretty cool to have. You usually try to have your quarterback's back, and so for him to have your back when it came to the fine was nice.
Yeah. So actually, what's that like with so with the team I played on, we had the entire same group from basically the time I was 8 years old to 18. We're at same quarterback. I was always center, same guard, same tackles. We all grew up together. But then what's the situation like where you have to have a really strong bond with your quarterback, especially at center, a little less at guard, but where, there's not always that constant quarterback. It's a little bit more of a revolving door situation.
Yeah, I think that's I've been lucky to play with a lot of good veteran quarterbacks. So I think they have an idea of how it's supposed to get done. And then as a veteran player, you have an idea of how it's supposed to get done. So I feel like I see the game pretty well. So any time I'm at center, which hasn't been as much as maybe I've wanted to play a little bit more guard than center, you try to help them out because, quarterbacks have so much on their plate and they are highly paid and highly regarded, but anything you can do to kind of, whether it's blocking scheme in the run game or in the pass game, take that off their plate. I think that's where a veteran offensive lineman will help them.
So then, what do you think that you learned the most? Like you said, it took you 4 years to kind of really get your legs. What do you think was the biggest factor and what you learned the most in that time? What was the biggest thing that helped you out?
So when I got to Arizona, we had a coach who kind of explained, basically what the defense is doing and what they're trying to accomplish. And the more you kind of look at the bigger picture and see what's going on, then the more you truly understand like what is trying to get accomplished. So I think kind of having someone explain it to you where you're learning the why as opposed to just running a play and knowing what both sides are doing allows you to, when you're on the field, make assessments and make judgments and play with more confidence because you know what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish. And if things change, you can make adjustments and on the fly. And I think I have a level of calmness when I'm playing, right? Because I feel confident in what I'm doing. Yeah,
great. Was there like a favorite guy that you had to play against where, whenever this certain guy came on your schedule, you were super excited about?
I mean, I think that maybe there has been, but defensive linemen have gotten so good. It's like, it's more of like a risk mitigation. It's like, there's just, every team has a good three technique, right? And and a good DN. So you're trying to, you don't really circle those games on your schedule because every week is going to be a battle. Whoever you're against, there's not really many weeks off. I feel like when I first got in the NFL, you play a team that's not playing particularly well, and you're going to take advantage of them. But like I said, there's so many good defensive linemen this year or in the league that kind of every week is a huge challenge.
Yeah, and so why do you think that there's all these better D linemen stuff that are coming out now opposed to 5-10 years ago?
I think college players are, when you think about defensive linemen, what makes them super dangerous is just their athleticism and strength and speed. And you look at everybody in the NFL and they're getting stronger, faster, and we're still having to do, as an offensive lineman, you're really kind of you're getting in the way of them. So as they get stronger, faster, more athletic, and then on top of that, get a better idea of what they're doing technique-wise, you're still doing your basic job, which is to get in front of them. So there's only so much you can do from an athleticism standpoint against a D lineman. So, like I said, there was definitely guys you could take advantage of, but like I said, I can't pinpoint. I guess I haven't given it much thought why the defenses are so good, but you definitely look at every team, and there's a dangerous three technique on just about every team.
Have you found anything that's been the most beneficial in, fighting with these guys as far as using more leverage, technique, your just, raw athleticism? What's been your best defense against, I guess, their defense?
I guess it depends who you're going against, but I mean, it starts out with having I think as any offensive lineman loves to run the ball. So if you have a good plan going into that week and you're going to run the ball, and that's kind of where you can, use your athleticism, your aggression, and set the tempo there. And then if you can build off that with some play action stuff, then that again is pretty O-line friendly. So, I mean, it starts off with a good plan, but you try to work on your technique year round, because these guys are so sound and they're so physically good that you really can't make a mistake. And I think that's what it comes down to with offensive line play is limiting mistakes. And you look at guys who have been successful and gotten big contracts, and they're really guys that maybe they're not physically dominating guys like you'd maybe seen in the early 2000s and the 90s, but they're not really making mistakes, and they're kind of not giving the defense a chance to make a big play.
Yeah. And then, so I know the one thing you touched on earlier was like how smart O linemen are. Do you think that's kind of like very common across where all O linemen I found are, pretty intelligent guys versus D linemen, or what's that situation like?
Yeah, I think there's a level of, there's a cerebral aspect to playing offensive line. You've got to apply your technique and your scheme against multiple fronts, and you don't know what the defense is going to come up in usually under, over. They could be 3 down. It could be all these different looks, and you're applying your rules and your scheme against that. So I think you're always thinking, and it's a position where you're very reactive. So you have to maybe use a little bit of game theory where you're like, oh, okay, what are they going to do? What am I going to do? So I think there is definitely a thinking aspect to offensive line play.
So I kind of want to just talk a little bit about, your life outside of football as well, because clearly that's a big part of, again, off season, free agency. What do you spend a lot of your time doing when you're not working out?
I guess it varies. When I was in Florida, I grew up in Florida, played 6 years in Florida. I really enjoyed fishing, saltwater fly fishing specifically. Out in Phoenix, I can't do that as much, but in Phoenix, love to play golf, love to hike. Really got into mountain biking since I've been out here as well.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a pretty good, there's some pretty good cross training activities you can do in the desert, hiking. So right now, actually, I've been taking a couple classes this past year, and it's worked out pretty good being in quarantine. We haven't had a ton of stuff to do, so I've been able to knock these classes out. And I think, it depends on the year. I've got 2 little babies now. I got a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
They keep me pretty busy. I've got my pilot's license. I took a trip to Chile to fly fish this year as well. So I like to stay busy. I like to do a bunch of different stuff, and it kind of just depends on where I'm at and what time of the year it is.
Yeah. So then when you're talking fly fishing in Florida, do you go down to the Keys?
Yeah. We lived in Fort Lauderdale when I was with the Dolphins.
Yeah.
So, and then when I lived in Tampa, we would go down to the Keys or the Everglades a lot. So that if you're talking about fly fishing for saltwater species, that's kind of the mecca.
Yeah. Yeah, we used to actually go down every year to go fishing in the Keys. I didn't fly fish personally. My brother was always a big fly fisherman, so that was always kind of the tough balance is like if he wanted to go for bonefish or fly fish on the flats for tarpon versus like what I could do while he was fly fishing, it was kind of just like I had to sit there for a bit. But like the big thing for me was always I love shark fishing. That was always my favorite thing to do was like my favorite shark easily is a hammerhead.
Yeah.
And so just like going down, I remember the first time I actually caught my first bonnet head shark, like my first hammerhead ever. And it's like literally like this long.
Yeah.
But it was such a cool experience going down there. The only thing for me though is the heat is crazy because, being from Alberta, we get cold winters, and it stays cold until like 3 weeks ago.
Oh,
Right.
really?
And yeah, so usually what happens here is we get a good amount of snow in like November, kind of December. It's like not terrible, but it's not great. And then January hits, and it'll be like minus 25 Celsius until March. So we'll have about 2 months straight of like cars are dead every day. You got to go warm them up for 20 minutes, like cold. So then whenever we would go down to like Florida for spring on our Easter break, it's like it's such a shock to your system going from that temperature all the way up to even Florida in late March was still
it's gonna be in the
pretty
80s,
high.
80s,
Yeah, and even just the sun off the water, right?
Yeah.
Just it's that glare it's crazy. So yeah, that's always been the big adjustment for me. But what's it like? Have you always been more of a hot weather guy, and has it been, is there any positives to training in those kind of weather conditions in Florida, Arizona?
Yeah, like I grew up in Florida. I live in Arizona. Played a lot in Florida. I actually enjoy cold weather because I don't know if it's a bigger guy. You can be pretty comfortable in cold weather, but and you kind of just cover up. Throw a hoodie on. But training in the heat, it's brutal. And being in Arizona, I think it's in the 110s right now. So it's like for me, I try to look at it as an advantage.
Right.
I think the dry heat of Arizona is not as brutal as the humidity of South Florida. I mean, the humidity of South Florida is unreal. You're just dripping sweat, and it's tough. The sun is brutal as well. Whenever I go fishing, I'm covered like hat, face mask, long sleeves. I don't even want to mess with applying sunscreen all day. I put it on and then just cover up with all those, sleeves and pants. Because it is so brutal, and it's like, especially when you're out in the flat, there's no place to hide from it. But I do love fishing, and to hear you talk about shark fishing, there's so many different types of fishing you can do in South Florida. That's one of the reasons it's so great is, if it's windy, which a lot of times it's windy in Florida, you can go shark fish or fish. I guess everything you do is pretty weather dependent, but there's so much variety, whether it's in the backcountry or whether it's offshore or whatever. And I definitely miss that part of Florida, especially, I have a boat down in Isla Mirada, and I haven't gotten to use it this year. So it's like, I'm kind of every past couple of days, I'm like, how far is it to drive to Miami from Phoenix? Maybe I should drive there and use the boat for a week or so.
Yeah, that was always, the good thing is when we'd go down to Florida for a week, we'd always schedule our offshore days where we do, 1 or 2 days where we'd be going offshore for tiger sharks or, Amico jacks or whatever we were going for. But then whenever we had our days, for the rest of them with our guide, it's not super windy. We can go out to the Gulf today and go for, big groupers or big sharks or, it's super calm. So we'll go with, for my brother so he can hit the flats, or we'll go back in the Everglades and catch, snapper and snook and all that kind of stuff for the day. And that was always a really cool thing is every day you could kind of pick a different, something that you want to go after and, find. Like we did, have you ever caught a sawfish?
No, I've seen a couple when I've been back in the Everglades National Park, but I've never caught one.
Yeah. We caught 2 one day. The day we went for him, and my brother caught a 15-foot, including the saw. And the first time we actually we didn't see it because obviously the water's so damn murky. But the first time we saw it at the boat, we saw the entire saw just come out of the water 4 feet in the air, and then swipe back and forth a couple times with all those teeth or whatever you call it on it, and it scares the absolute shit out of you just seeing this a literal prehistoric animal. And then I caught one after that. It was 10, 12 feet, but it was worse because it got tangled up in the rope that we had the anchor attached to. So with our guide, we had to bring the boat to shore and haul in the sawfish to the shore and untangle it from the anchor line. And it was just it's an absolute nightmare situation. But it's some of the stuff you find back there as far as the alligators and the sawfish and just the shit that happens back there. It's crazy.
It is unbelievable. And it's such a resource, and you hate to see, they've had some trouble with, the water quality and a lot of the grass dying. And you just hope that it can, guys will take care of it, and it can stay such a resource, because that's something that my kids. I haven't gotten to fish them a ton, but you hope in 5 or 10 years that the fishing is still as good as it's been. I've had me and my wife have spent so much time back there, especially in the Everglades National Park, and it's an amazing resource.
The really awful thing is when the hurricane hit last year. Was it last year?
Oh, there was a hurricane in 2017 when I was there.
Yeah. So, when that hit and we saw like all the restaurants in Islamorada that, we would go to, Ma's Fish Cafe. And there was a couple other ones, the Hungry Tarpon stuff, that were just like these iconic restaurants and unreal food. And they're literally gone. And some of them have been able to rebuild, Bud and Mary's reopened, but a lot of the stuff down there was just like, there's just so little land versus the water that is the anything comes.
Was huge. It was funny that, I guess not funny, maybe lucky. I was on short-term injured reserve, so I was coming back from a torn bicep, but that hurricane was coming, and I had my skiff. I was living in Fort Lauderdale, and my skiff was in Islamorada. And I was like, I got to go get this thing, like, and pull it out of the Keys. Like, I don't know what's because they weren't sure where the hurricane was going to hit, and so luckily I drove down one day after rehab and picked it up and drove my skiff back to Fort Lauderdale. Otherwise, it might have been completely ruined, because that hurricane in 2017 did such damage, like you talked about.
Yeah. Was there ever like a certain kind of fish that you loved catching and eating, or was fish a big part of your diet? Living in that area.
No, because in Fort Lauderdale, there's not much. It's a lot of offshore fishing, and so it's like you got to kind of pick your days. I mean, obviously, grouper and mahi are something I like to catch offshore and eat. But as far as eating it a ton from catching it, not a ton, not as much as I would have liked. But I do love. You spend enough time fishing in Florida, you find little spots, where you've got, a couple white baits or shrimp, and you go back and absolutely, hammer the snapper. So I mean, if I was gonna eat a fish, it's probably some kind of a snapper, and they're so easy to catch and easy to cook. That's definitely something I miss doing.
Yeah, we don't have a ton of we have really good fishing here, fly fishing in our rivers, but you don't really want to eat any of it. A lot of it's protected to begin with, and the stuff you can eat, it's like not always. Yeah, so the one thing I kind of want to create is like a recurring segment is obviously with linemen, eating is this big thing that everyone is always talking about or discussing. So I kind of want to create a recurring segment about what is your favorite food? What would be the one food that if you had to eat one thing for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh God, I love steak, and it's kind of gone all over, as far as what cut, it used to be a ribeye, filet. I mean, I've been huge into like barbecue tri-tip, if I had to eat one thing every day, it would probably be tri-tip and some white rice. That's like my go-to thing. I probably do eat it every day almost. But I've got like a Traeger grill. I've had that for like 6 years, and really for me the tri-tip's been like an unreal. It's a meat that it's not super hard to cook. I kind of reverse sear it. I bring it up to like 125, and then I cook it, sear it after that, and I usually cook 2 or 3 on a Saturday and have it for the rest of the week. Heat it up for lunch and dinner. But I mean, for that, it's pretty simple. And if I could think about it, there would probably be some meals that be like, oh my God, this is like my favorite meal of my life. But something you're gonna eat every day is, for me, it's tri-tip all the way.
Cool. And so I think it was you I saw that had like some brisket sandwiches a couple days ago. Yeah. So do you do a lot of like your own smoking and stuff?
Absolutely. Yeah. I got my wife. There was like when we first moved to Arizona, there was like a Traeger in a mall, and I think it's become a pretty big company, Traeger, with the pellet smokers. But at the time, I was like, "What is this thing you got me?" But we've gotten really into it, and we enjoy smoking, whether it's chicken, usually some kind of beef, brisket, beef ribs, something like that. But Yeah, we usually have that 4 or 5 times a week.
Hmm. And then, so I'm actually curious about, for a while, red meat was kind of seen as this like bad thing where people were ingesting, too much red meat. But it's actually kind of went the opposite direction now, I think, where a lot more people are going towards red meats for the nutrients that it contains that you can't always get from, lean chicken and turkey and stuff. Do you consume mostly red meat now?
Yeah, I do, and I mean, like I said, I try to I do like leaner cuts. Whether it's like a London broil or a fillet or like a flank steak. I try to stay away from the ribeye and stuff, but yeah, I do like red meat. I feel better when I'm eating red meat. I don't want to. I enjoy chicken as well, but I don't want to say it's like a weak bird. I've heard people
Yeah.
talk about it. Chicken's like a weak bird. But yeah, I do like red meat, and I'm sure there's some kind of a benefit for it. But
Mhm.
for me, I perform better and feel better when I'm eating steak as opposed to chicken. It might change
Yeah.
as I get older. I've got friends that are older, and they're like, "I have gout. I can't eat any red meat. Like it's killing me."
Yeah.
But I hope it doesn't get there.
Yeah. Great. So we're pretty much out of time, but the one thing I always want to ask everyone, 'cause I get a lot of people asking me about what do I do to make it to the NFL? Any advice on, work ethic, determination, drills, that kind of stuff? Do you have any advice that you could lend to people listening about, things they should maintain if they do want to make it far in football?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I always felt like I would play in college, and it seemed like a dream. It seemed like a far dream, but I kind of had goals. I had small goals, long-term goals, and kind of like a burning desire to know that I really wanted to do this. Same thing going to NFL. It seemed like kind of a pipe dream, but it ended up becoming, it's a 10-year plus reality. So I think everybody wants it, and I think that you have to make sacrifices for sure. Whether it's staying home and resting or going to bed early. It's a lot of little sacrifices that you make, and I think that pays off. When you get drafted or when you get a chance to play in college and earn a scholarship. There's like I tell guys on, since I've started my Instagram, it's only been a couple months, but there's so many young guys that reach out and they want to know. And you got to think right now with YouTube and Google and Instagram and social media, there's so many opportunities to learn stuff. There's
Right.
so many videos, so much content out, so many resources. You can reach out to whatever your favorite NFL player. I always try to respond to DMs and messages. It's such a time. There's such accessibility to reach out and learn and
Yeah.
to watch film, watch games, whatever. I think, but like I said, I think it comes down to a lot of little sacrifices and having goals that you work towards and whether that's playing in college or the NFL. It's definitely a tough thing to earn, but I appreciate all the work I've put in, and it makes it that much sweeter.
Yeah. And then do you have, a timeline as far as, you've been playing for, basically 10 years at this point. Do you have an end game in mind about, what you want to do when you're done playing, how long you want to play for, after, I guess, this year? Yeah. Do you have any sort of
Yeah, I mean, I think
timeline?
I'd like to play maybe 2 or 3 more years. My body feels good. I think eventually it's just going to come down to like transitioning to another job, and I think I'd like to go back to school to get my MBA,
Yeah.
Master's in Business. And I think it's like, okay, well, you're 32, like let's get going here on the second career, and it's like
Yeah.
becomes more of like an age thing for me. But like I said, I feel good, body feels good, and the kids enjoy watching me play, and
Mhm.
it's every year you have in the NFL is a great experience. So uh, I have a plan for transitioning. As the years go along, it changes and pivots and stuff, but I definitely have a plan and thinking about 2 or 3 more years.
Cool. Actually, the one thing I do want to ask you about, because I was literally just going to crack my neck. Do you have anything that you do for, routine physical therapy that you found helps you out a lot? Chiropractor, massage, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean it's over the years I've done a ton of different stuff, and you hear people do stuff, and so you try it. right now it's pretty simple. It's like one massage a week,
Yeah.
and for me that keeps me pretty good. You know,
Hmm.
I've done all different kinds of ART, MAT, like it was functional range conditioning. Like I've done a million different things, and usually massage once or twice a week has been kind of the simple ticket for me and kept me pretty healthy. I've had some success with, you know, dry needling and
Hmm.
acupuncture stuff with soft tissue if I have a soft tissue specific issue, but I keep it pretty simple with massage, and that keeps me where I need to be.
Yeah. You know, the one thing that actually I didn't think it would do anything, but basically I had to get a gift from my grandma to me for Christmas because she was coming in super late for Christmas last year. So it's like I just had to get her myself the gift, and you know, whatever the situation. And I went to the mall and I went to like a showcase store where they show like as seen on TV products, and I got this massager that it basically wraps around your neck. You put your arms and then you kind of tuck your arms down, and that's what keeps its pressure as it has all the little balls and stuff that go
Oh
around your
yeah.
neck. And I used to get probably, you know, I got headaches uh, one every 2 days, depending on stress levels and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And I was always going to the chiropractor to help him fix me because I could never fully crack my neck myself. And then after I started using this every morning, I do the massage thing on my neck for 10 minutes while I drink my coffee. And then I'm able to crack my neck after. And it's like, it's improved just my overall like health and how I feel by like, you know, 5, 6 o'clock at night with my neck so dramatically over the past like literally 2 months. And it was like a $50 thing that I thought would break within 2 uses.
Yeah.
Like, but it's actually been amazing. And even the thing is, I've never been able to crack my back. I've always had like a super, super tight back. And so now I'm starting to transition in where I'm just like, it's not meant for your back, but I'm just sliding it down and
Yeah.
kind of leaning against it for another 5, 10 minutes. And yeah, just like the amount of progress it's made just to have like any sort of home massage thing, just to loosen up some muscles to get, you know, get me moving in the morning, has been like incredible, especially when it was like 40, 45 bucks maybe to buy it. And I was going to the chiropractor twice a week for $60 a session before,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you can do stuff that feels good for you and, you know, works
Hmm.
for you, and I mean, really the name of the game is kind of just blood flow. You know, what most modalities are trying to, you know, get some kind of blood flow and warm up the tissue. So like I said, whatever works. For me, it's been massage, and uh, lately we get so much sun here, and you know,
Yeah.
vitamin D. So I've actually been laying outside. One of the guys at OLP, Taylor Boggs, who played a couple of years in the NFL, has been a big proponent of laying naked outside. So I've been laying it naked out by my pool, trying to get some vitamin D, and that's been my latest kind of wacky thing I do. My wife's kind of over that. I'm like, yeah, you should just take a video and put it on in social media. It'll be great. She's like, you'll end up on like ESPN, it's like outtakes or something.
Yeah.
But you know, I always try something weird every year, you know, whether it lasts or not. But the massage has been something over my 10-year career that I do pretty religiously.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, again, thanks to Budge for coming on today. I really appreciate it. And, you know, obviously people are super busy right now getting ready and gearing up for the season. And, you know, all the work that goes into it. So I really appreciate you taking the time to, you know, even talk to me today.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad we could talk. Thank you.
All right. Thanks,
Yeah,
Ted.
thanks.
Have a great day.
Yeah.